on learning. Learning is an ongoing process. And, I thought that at some point in time I'd stop learning, but that isn't the case. And for those of you who have followed the show, I appreciate you. Thank you. Been interesting. Life is interesting. New job, new challenges, and we have to be steadfast and keep our head above water and try to keep the tire functioning. So again, I want to thank everyone for tuning in and taking the time. Today's show is again our New Year's show, and it's January, and I wanted to start with a quote by Martin Luther King. He said, "I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear." And so, with that being said, we need to kind of be more understanding, more forgiving, and it's that's a challenge with children, with family, with friends, with people that you care about. It's always going to be an issue. So we have to, as a good friend of mine said, keep it moving. And I wanted to give a shout out and say his name, Keith Porter Jr. Mr. Keith Porter Jr. is not with us now. He's 43 years of age, and my glasses are kind of bothering me. And he was 43-year old who was shot and killed New Year's Eve in the Northridge neighborhood of Los Angeles by an off-duty U.S. immigration and enforcement officer. And I don't know why they're calling these things. And I just want to, again, kind of like, I digress, what's going on now in America. And regardless of your stripe, political or social, you have to say, are we really living in America? Well, we are, because if you go back to 1619, this was just a common behavior. This is what happened. This is nothing new. So we acting as if it's new. It's acting to a group of people that now we get to view. And I have to mention this is that in the countries that are being attacked from an immigrant standpoint, they're considered to be white. And that's what they put on all the immigration papers. So the fact that they're being singled out and attacked because they have a homecoming is just, I just don't understand it. It's not what America's about. When you're beating up young or old, has women of any stripe, of any gender, that's disconcerting. And I want to give another shout out to Miss Renee Good, who's no longer with us. She was the Minneapolis woman that was murdered by ICE agents in this year. Well, it just isn't that is this year. And we're going to talk about health, but I think that this is a social context in which I can lay the groundwork for my program, because it all benefits. It causes health changes. It causes mental changes. It makes people more sick when things like this are going on. You don't feel safe when you are dealing with affordability, and people tell you to eat cake. I think we have to be okay with calling these things out. And so at age 70 and been around the block a few times, I have to do that. That's my charge. I have a new grandson. I have 4 granddaughters. I have a son that's trying to change his life. So I want him to be in a safe environment. And so Mr. Porter's family and friends have called for accountability, transparency, and possible charges against the agent involved, and justice. You should not justify what you're seeing now is what's called cognitive dissonance. And in cognitive dissonance, you say that the person or group is not human. So therefore, you can treat them any way. And as I said last year, in the last couple of years of the program, the lie is becoming the truth, and truth is becoming a lie. You see it right in your face. So that's what we're dealing with. That's what we've been dealing with. That's what we have to deal with. And it's nothing new. And so that's of January 26th, is the number of people killed by or indirect custody of the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE. And what we have to say about this is, you can go back to 2016 and the black codes and Reconstruction and all the things that happen to African Americans as they travel to 2026, and the need to have laws, civil rights laws, in order to protect us, that are now being peeled away. Here's some numbers. Deaths in ICE custody. In the calendar year 2025, this is just last year, at least 30 people held in ICE detention died. You're not supposed to go to jail or any kind of incarceration and die. That's not supposed to happen. You can be arrested, you can be detained, you should have right to counsel, you should be able to access legal representation. Very, very common, bare bones American traditional issues that are being stripped away from people because of cognitive dissonance. This is the highest toll in about 2 decades in terms of record keeping. So they're making up for all the years they didn't kill people in custody. In the calendar year of 2025, at least 30 people held in ICE detention died, the highest total in about 2 decades, according to record keeping. This is from GPT chat, kind of cross-section it with a couple other references, but it's pretty spot on. And this is Believe Radio, a 24-hour community gospel radio station. Etymology just helped me set up. I want to thank Curtis for all his time and energy with me, and we're going to re-collaborate. Love you, man. Miss Howard, of Eyes of Conscious Soul, she's running it. Good stuff. Thank you. We'll keep it moving. Deaths and confrontations involving ICE agents, use of force and shootings. So that means that your life is, you have fear for your life. You feel like you're already killed. Now, you can't change the narrative after you've shot and killed somebody. Now, remember, this is a site in 2025 that we had videos. What was going on before then? Justifiable homicide in the African American community. If you go further, lynchings in the African American community. So this is not new. This is not new. In fact, at one point in time, Irish and Italian were immigrants. Of course, it came to mafia and all, but that's another discussion. And they compiled a list. It says at least 6 fatal shootings by immigration results in death. Renee Good most recently. And however you pay the narrative is, she wasn't supposed to be shot. She should have drove away. She would have drove to her home. They would have stopped, take her license plate, run it, go to her home and arrest her. Don't shoot her. And you hear all this banter on the internet about, well, she used her car as a weapon and blah, 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 blah. If she used her car as a weapon, get out of her way and then go arrest her. You didn't have to kill her. You didn't have to kill her. I think that's the point. You didn't have to kill her. You didn't have to kill that young man. And speaking of killing, we're seeing an increase in measles deaths. This is 2025, and babies are dying of measles. Babies are dying of flu. This is what America wanted. We're over vaccinated. Too many people getting vaccinated. We can't trust the vaccinations. So you roll a guy into one of the most powerful offices in the United States because it's about our health, and he rolls back vaccinating. Now you haven't seen, because it's just the first year. Give it about another 2 or 3 years, maybe even 5. And children will be dying unnecessarily of influenza and measles because the parents haven't vaccinated them. And usually the parents aren't vaccinated. There's still 30% post-COVID that didn't get vaccinated. Whatever you feel about vaccinations, I'm a vaccination baby, so I can't argue. So approximately, the figures here, ICE in 2025 was 30 plus deaths, folks in custody, and multiple fatal shootings of folks, at least 6. So I have to, important clarification, deaths in custody are distinct from deaths caused directly by intentional use of lethal force. ICE records fatality counts for people who die while detained for medical causes, suicide, etc. But these are classified administratively and not always as killed by ICE. What that means is the numbers are being messed with. There's probably more folks dying than we know of. That now we're getting to don't trust the government. Don't trust what the government says. Didn't this group of people run into office saying they were going to drain the swamp? Well, famous quote, we have met the enemy and he is us. I didn't understand that till now. We have met the enemy and he is us. So they could be messing with the figures. Not uncommon. By saying something that happened administratively as opposed to lethal force, you put it in different boxes. And it depends on who's reporting it, right? And what their claim is into it. So you can get a different story from the government, you get a different story from investigative reporters, you get a different story from the people on the street. That's kind of where we're at. This is Believe Radio, a 24-hour inspirational and gospel station. We're here. I'm here the second and third Saturdays of the month. And my guest, Pastor Andre, over in Fremont, doing some great work with the homeless, had to do a meeting and was not able to hook up. We'll try to get him back on, but we have to continue. We have to keep it moving. So I asked the question, why religion and the Christian ethic, and why does it matter? I think that growing up in a Baptist family with a very religious mother and stepfather and father, somehow we felt that was, and I feel it still is, the social glue that keeps us together, that keeps us hopeful, that keeps us prayerful. The Bible is an African document. All the stories occur in Africa. So being mindful of that's the center for me. And certainly in these last times in my life right now, if not for a spiritual guidance and a belief that there's a power higher than mine, I certainly might have went crazy, literally. So I asked the question, what's religion? And the Christian ethic matters, right? It says that at its core, religion addresses mean, moral obligation, and communal responsibility. So that's the foundation. That's in all religions, I believe. If you look at all religions, they would have some component of that. Even religions that we don't agree with will have that as a foundation if it's a true religion. Now, you can have a religions of marijuana and worship your concept of the devil, or I guess it's okay, but that's the meaning I would hold to. So at its core, addressing meaning, religion addresses moral obligation and communal responsibility. And then Christianity takes a concrete ethical form: love of neighbor, preferential concern for the poor, inherently, and if he had been here, Andre had been here, I would have asked him that. Inherent dignity of every person. Faith is not merely belief, but it's also action, measured by how the society treats the least of us. The Christian ethic therefore directs attention to those most vulnerable, insisting that compassion be organized, sustained, and just. And I would also add empathetic. I've been saying there's a loss of empathy in the society because it says that I have to look at you and say what I would. If I want something for you, why would I? If I want something for me, and I also want it for you. I also want it for you. And that's a heavy burden because that means you put someone above yourself, which is the highest order. And so with that, I was going to ask him about homelessness. He's majoring in homelessness. Has built his religious career on it. And we were talking about the numbers. And so I'll share some of those with you because I just think it's so essential that homelessness and drug addiction weren't an issue until it started happening to everyone. Or we start to see everyone because for a long time it was hidden. Just like mental health issues, hidden. Sexual issues, hidden. When you're training, you get really minimal training in behavioral health and sexual education. Providers don't know how to talk about it. We don't know how to talk about mental issues. We don't know how to talk about sexual issues. We don't do a good job of it. So, something we got to work on. Something where it requires lifelong learning because things change. And now with different communities, the LGBT community, whole different way how you have to look at these things. If you are about compassion, moral obligation, communal responsibility. Simple as that. And I like says that the Christian ethic therefore directs attention to those most vulnerable, insisting the compassion be organized, sustained, and just. And just, right? We're a just society. So, talked about discussions around homelessness and those with mental illness. I thought it was really important because crux of the people we see now are having mental challenges that affect their overall life or having medical challenges that make them more mentally vulnerable. So it's a two flip of the coin. Christian teaching is explicit. Feed the hungry, shelter the unhoused, heal the sick, and restore the marginalized. Homelessness and mental illness are not framed moral failures, but as human conditions demanding mercy, advocacy, and structural care and change. So it's encompassed on us as a community to be the light of that community. And it's so hard because it demands that you forget yourself and move to the needs of others. Or be cognizant of the needs of others, or understanding the needs of others. That's why medicine was probably a good career for me, because I needed to understand the big picture and how it would be affected. That's what Stanford taught me, the big picture. UCSF taught me the organizational structure and its effect on people and how systems affect people. This is Believe Radio, inspirational gospel music. This is Education in Best Medicine's annual show for the new year. Say Happy New Year, and Martin Luther King. So what would Martin Luther King say? Well, again, the Christian teaching is explicit. It is about feeding the hungry, sheltering the unhoused, healing the sick, and restoring marginalized to marginalized societies. The ethical mandate extends beyond charity to justice. That means giving $2 or $3 to somebody and walking away, which has been my mark. Work on that one, right? Addressing housing, access to healthcare, dignity and treatment, and the social systems that perpetuate exclusion. Let's read out, get those. What would Martin Luther King say then and now? He said, well, Dr. King consistently urged racial justice and economic justice and moral responsibility. They were inseparable in his mind. That's what makes him such a great man. And if we look at the bigger picture, me now, my 70, I see how a society would morph or create a conflictual nature between Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. They were very good friends, and they knew who they were fighting. But the media doesn't play it that way. It's interesting. Spike Lee does Kings of Comedy, makes a few dollars, so he's able to finance Malcolm X. And I don't believe it got the support it got, because that meant that we were honoring black men and black people in their fight for struggle and street and freedom in America. And that's something America doesn't want to have happen. Ask the president, ask the current commander and chief, as they call him. You got to ask why he wants to tear up a ballroom that the structure was built by African Americans, slaves. It's interesting, right? Make a ballroom out of it, right? Okay. We need that. What would Dr. King do? He would remind us that the society is judged not by the rhetoric, but by its budget, priorities, policies, and willingness to protect human dignity. Today's climate, marked by polarization, widening inequality, and criminalization of poverty, he would like to express more urgency, disappointment, coupled with resolve. I'm going to read that again. Martin Luther King, in today's climate, marked by polarization, widening inequity, criminalization of poverty, he would likely express more urgency and disappointment coupled with resolve. King would insist that the homeless and untreated mental illness represent a failure of love translated into policy. He would call faith communities and civil leaders to reject indifference, resist dehumanization, and build what he would term a beloved community. And once were compassion in institutionalization and justice is non-negotiable. I think he would do that. I've started to appreciate Martin Luther King more. That's why I'm giving him some time. He gave us some time. He's short too. Short little black man. But when he won the Nobel Prize, he won the Nobel Prize. He wasn't given a Nobel Prize. He was very humble. And I saw pictures of him and he just looked humble. But powerful, very powerful. So we have to understand in a historical context that, remember, he was murdered. He was murdered on the steps of a motel after speaking to garbage workers about humanity and affordability and fairness. What I fear, I must kill. Because his next great fight was going to be economic injustice. And early on, he was being told to stay in his lane. Because as America wants to control the narrative, they would want to try to control the man. If you can't control the man, I have to kill the man. Gil Scott said that in his famous piece, Watergate. He said, "Time's now right on us, brother. There's no sense in arguing now. All of your children and all of my children are going to have to pay for our mistakes one day. But until then, may peace guide your way." He died of a heroin overdose. He died of a drug overdose. Great black man poet. Him and the Last Poets. Go get their music, check them out. Brilliant people. And it got me to thinking, coming here, there was a comment made by recently, you go look it up, one of the government folks that serve in the Secretary of Agriculture, Miss Brooke Rollins, said that a minimalist meal could be a piece of chicken, a piece of broccoli, and a corn tortilla. And she said that would feed a whole bunch of folks. Okay, I wonder what she's eating. Isn't it interesting that people can tell you what to eat, but they ain't gonna eat it? So, Ms. Rollins serves as the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture in the Trump administration. Case in point, go home and whoever you with, give them a piece of chicken, a piece of broccoli, a corn tortilla, and then tell them that's a great meal for them, and see what happens. I got some babies would get up in arms about that. But yet and still, this is what Ms. Brooke Rollins serves as the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture in the Trump administration. She suggested that this is an example of how Americans could afford healthy meals on a budget in light of updated federal dietary guidelines. The remark was widely reported and criticized in national media. So I equated that with Marie Antoinette, who told her subjects in France, let them eat cake. Of course, they were starving, so she said, well, you can have cake too, you know? So the phrase, let them eat cake, is family's thought of and tribute to Marie Antoinette, the Queen of France in the late 18th century. It used historically to illustrate aristocratic indifference to widespread hunger, implying that if the poor couldn't afford bread, they could eat cake instead. Or a piece of chicken, or a piece of broccoli, or a tortilla. The phrase became a symbol of elite detachment from the real conditions of the ordinary people. So do you think in 2025, those that are running this and doing this are attached to real world circumstance? Because the issue was we were running on affordability, and when day one, I'm going to bring down all these prices for all the people that need it. Day one of the administration. We're in January now, and we're still having problems with affordability. And it seems that people, particularly those that are in positions of power, are tone deaf to us. Many commentators immediately drew a parallel between Rollins' suggestion and this historical phrase because both statements were perceived as tone-deaf responses from someone in power to who does not struggle with affordability. Critics urge that to suggest such a simplistic and sparse meal is an answer to the rising food costs reflects a lack of understanding of economic realities for low and middle income families. And again, nutritionally, it's a deficit. That's not a nutritionally based meal with the new guidelines that say you should be eating more meat, more protein, less fast food. So the social and political implications of that kind of thought process is that Rollins' example was widely marked and oversimplified, impractical, especially at a time when grocery prices remain high. Critics urge that the proposal ignored the live reality of many Americans who struggle with food insecurity and the rising cost of living. Tone deaf, which means they don't hear you. It's not that they don't hear you, it's that they don't care. Loss of empathy. This dynamic mirrors how let them eat cake became shorthand for the perceived elite ignorance. Broader economic context. Rollins framed her comment within the administration's effort to promote healthier eating as line and with the updated federal guidelines, but the backlash indicates that the economic context, especially the affordability of basic necessities, matter deeply to public perceptions of what they consume. Simple dietary advice without addressing systemic cost pressures can appear dismissive of structural challenges. Political polarization. The reaction to the comment on the women, let them eat cake. Remember, if you want to do your budget, you should get a piece of chicken, one broccoli stem, one flat tortilla, and that'll take care of your needs. Makes sense? Not in my mind. And I think that we are at a point where that's sad. That really, really, really is sad. It says a lot about not just who we are, but what we aren't. And I think that, excuse me. I think that we have to be mindful of the issues. I want to thank my Facebook family. They'll be delayed. My YouTube family, thank you very much. We're going to get this together. We're going to do better. We got to do better. We want to increase the population. I want more folks to see us. I want more folks to do, because we're just talking real truth here. Just straight out, facts. No chaser. So that's my mindset about this. No axe to grind. I do what I do. So the reaction to the comment underscores ongoing political polarization in the United States. Polarization, what does that mean? It means that we, one side doesn't believe the other side, the other side believes the other side, don't trust the government, that stuff. Now, I wonder how people think about their vote now. But I don't think about 75% of Americans voting for this present administration and thought that they weren't going to be object to its heavy-handed racist taxes. Ask about Trump denying housing to African Americans. This is nothing new. We keep thinking it's new. It's not. And so, in summary, the official question was the Agricultural Secretary Brooke. Well, her comment was widely perceived, especially by critics, as reflecting a lack of awareness of how difficult it is for many Americans to afford basic meals, leading to comparisons with the attributed phrase "let them eat cake." Both instances serve as cultural touchstones, highlighting perceived disconnects between policy and ordinary lived experience with hunger and economic hardship. And so, if Pastor Andre were here, because he takes care of a large homeless population, I would have asked him about it. And some of the facts that stood out to me that I'm with him to discuss this is, this is Alameda County now. We're really home. Alameda County. From Fremont to, Bay Area. Says that an unhoused individual in Alameda County experiencing an acute medical and mental health crisis is likely to incur between $1,800 and $9,000 in costs from ER discharge. And that's just an estimate. What if the person is really sick? What if he has high blood pressure? What if she has diabetes? What if they are going through a psychosis? What does that mean? It means that at least 1 to 25 people are going to touch that person. It means resources that would go to a much sicker person is dealing with a person that has a psychosis and has been homeless, and now his medical or her medical problems are not been treated. Now, layer that with the fact that the medical rolls are going to be cut, and so all those patients that don't have access to care and are going to lose their medicines are going to be enveloping the county system. It's going to overwhelm it. It has to. It's not enough people. I'm dealing with it every day. And if not for my ability to understand technology and then look at some of these ambient scribe platforms, I'd be overwhelmed. And was up to a point until I figured this out. And that's what you have to constantly reinvent yourself, re-educate yourself, learn new techniques, because my average patient load is going to be 22 a day. My average patient load. So, in most cases, the range centers around between $2,000 and $4,000 worth of cost, and especially when care is delivered via integrated Alameda County systems modeled with Medicare funding. So they've got some places, some systems in place that allow for that individual to be processed so that it doesn't cost another $3,000 or $4,000. And who are the high utilizers? I would have asked him that. Well, substance use disorder, particularly methamphetamine and fentanyl, are driving repeat ED visits and psychiatric holds, especially among younger adults and those with occurring disorders. And I would say the LGBT community is involved in that. I would say the older or younger man is involved in that. Interesting enough, the drugs of choice in my first 20 years were heroin, cocaine, and marijuana, and alcohol and tobacco. Alcohol and tobacco are the more biggest killers. We talk about all this other stuff, but alcohol and tobacco are there's nothing that says in any kind of medical guidelines that you should smoke and you'll be better. There's one case where smoking helps, and it's some GI, it's Crohn's disease. But even then, you wouldn't want the person to smoke because they would cause lung disease, cancer, respiratory problems, COPD, asthma, acute respiratory distress syndrome, triggers, right? Environment. So not only are respiratory problems from structure, they're from environment. So now, for the first time, I saw the guideline that says that environmental factors pose respiratory threats. And it's a disease called bronchiectasis, where basically the peripheral of the airways are inflamed and kind of like get messed up, get inflamed, and they close down, get inflamed, they close down. There's some cascades of infection. Don't know what happened, why it happens. But the issue is, lung therapy and exercise and that kind of thing. So interesting enough, the drugs have changed. There's now methamphetamine and fentanyl. Again, when I was practicing, as I practiced, was heroin and some of these newer designer drugs, that are causing the problem. But basically, that's what's driving the repeater syndrome in the ER. On a state and national level, high cost claim is often defined as the top 1%, which could equal $250,000, and it's about 5-10% of the patients that have. And the national high utilizers, guess what, are traditionally Black and Latino. I think that dynamic is different in Alameda County. It says Alameda County says their client base is predominantly African American and Latino, with approximately 9% of Medicare, Medicaid. That may change dynamic because of the cutbacks. And in studies in high hospital, explore high utilizers of the ED to understand, barriers to care. And one of the things that we found was, and what they found at age, Alameda County data shows that a mixture of children, working age, adults, seniors, all represented heavily. Not only all are insured predominantly via Medicaid, Medi-Cal, or Medicare. Many fall into the poverty line. And this is a social determinant, right? Poverty line is a social determinant. And it says that if you live below the poverty line, your health is going to be worse because you don't have the access. Maybe you're homeless. Maybe you're between jobs. All that. So nationally, the high rates are among older adults greater than 65. Why? Because they stop working, unfortunately. Or they retire, and then the income doesn't keep up with their health needs. And we don't plan as Americans. That's something that we just don't plan for. But also subgroups of younger adults with complex chronic/mental conditions. Young men traumatized. And I was in a group that was challenging adverse childhood trauma events in the grading of them in the Alameda County system, particularly as it relates to people of color. Is that the right system for us? Does it equate and take into account our heart, basically? Not just what happened to us, but our heart and our resilience. Stay tuned. And also, so the number of mixture of children, working adults, and seniors all represented heavily. Over 50%. Again, this is the poverty line, children, up until the time we were trying to get children off the poverty line, and with these policies, going to put them right back in with the family. The difference between what I saw earlier in my career, single men, women, substance use, has been returned to for families. They're not hitting the poverty line. Working families. $100,000 for a family of 5 is considered, poverty. $100,000. So why is the imbalance? It's a combination of multi-morbidity, behavioral health, social determinants, housing, income, air quality, and systemic barriers to primary care. Systemic and structural racism. That kind of bears fruit in renal disease. And the fact that why Black folks weren't on the transplant list, and that goes to any list. weren't on the transplant list. And when they were on, they seemed stuck in the same number. So a number of the institutions had to do a reset. It just gentleman did a piece on renal disease and renal transplant, and so a lot of the centers now had to recalculate into their workflows and algorithm the fact that there's been typically racial determination that African American kidneys were stronger, thereby not needing transplants as soon as they would. Of course, that's a lie. If your kidney's bad, it's bad. If it's going bad, it's going bad. So that delayed a lot of folks, a lot of African American folks, from getting renal transplant and not getting on the list, first of all, and getting escalation up the list. They didn't, I must say to their credit, they recalculated and now they take that into account. And it pushes a lot of people of color to the front of the list. Again, institutional racism, same thing with these pulsometers. They don't read the melanin in the skin. And young brother physician who just graduated won a Peabody Award for his a podcast on institutional structural racism. He makes it comfortable. I'm just hard. He looks the part too. Nice hair, shaved, and it's nice, like, my brothers. However it works. And in Alameda County, God, it's Highland. They tried to focus on high ED utilizers because they just drain the system. 1% of the population draining the system, basically. Something it's just the cost. And so, because the demographics are largely African American, Black, Latino, multi-morbid, low-income, housing insecure, local solutions blend clinical interventions and community public/health programs addressing social determinants. Right. You hear this term social determinants, food, clothing, and shelter. For a number of years, people like myself were saying that, I can get this person fixed. I can give them medicines for their pneumonia. I can treat their foot ulcer and get them in diabetic care and get the sugars down. But if they have to if they have no place to live, then they can't store their insulin. They should have to be in a decent environment where you keep things clean. If they don't have that, they're not going to live. They're going to come back. So that's kind of the modus operandi for this. And it was always about social determinants for me, because if you change social determinants, food, clothing, shelter, access, safety, nutrition, people's health got better, regardless of whether they came to the provider or not. So, and that brings me to, we talked about this last year, but it's in full effect now. Alameda County, when a person has mental health challenges, family members or concerned people can refer individuals to care court. And it's for severe behavioral health symptoms, often related to untreated schizophrenia or other psychiatric disorders. Now, I've asked you folk to go pull up the video, The Protest Psychosis. It's by a Jewish physician who went to one of the state hospitals, which was then turned into a prison. It was a state mental hospital that got turned into a prison. This is a common thing. They did it all the time. But in this case, they studied schizophrenia, and the protest psychosis is when the original diagnosis for young white males, female, very, very, soft, docile, nothing to worry about, nothing to see here to say more than an issue. But when it got to the 60s and 70s, and these brothers were being politically active in and resistant to, being traumatized, they said they arrested these brothers and said they were crazy. And you know how that turns out, right? So keep this in context. That a lot of things happen to us that we had no control over. A lot of the labels that have happened, we had no control over. That's why this whole discussion around adverse child trauma as a benchmark for trauma in families. And, I think this stuff has happened to everybody. So we all could have adverse child trauma. And the question is that specific for that culture or society? How do those cultures of society handle trauma or perceive trauma? Because it may be different than what we believe happened or should happen or did happen. So this care court, they want the individual to be experiencing delusions, which means he thinks that they are not there, hallucinations, again, voices, suicide ideation, disorganized thinking, or behaviors that pose a threat to themselves or other. Many are also unhoused or marginally housed and may have concurring substance use disorders because it quiets the voices, quiets the pain. And the mayor of San Jose recently said, had instituted and passed by city council discussion around being homeless and a failure for us, the patients, to accept care. Therefore, care court. And care court is a process launched locally on December 24th. We voted for this. We voted for this. And I'm mixed. On one hand, I understand it. On the other hand, that's the person's right. But if the person's right says that they're not sick, but they're in the middle of the street, they're closed down and urinating and harassing young kids, it's not good. You have to take care of those who can't take care of themselves. And this is an option. Not a perfect option, but an option. So the care court was launched locally on December 24th, 2 years ago, designed to intervene before these individuals cycle repeatedly through ER. So Alameda County was sued about the cycling of young men through the jail, mental health, homeless, couch surfing, homeless, arrest, mental health service. They just cycled them. No one ever got treated. And so part of the mandate is that the most sickest need to have a treatment plan that helps them get better, that treats what the issue is. So, discussing. Always an interesting discussion. This is Believe Radio, 24-hour inspirational and gospel music. I want to thank Pastor Andre for his time he had taken away, and we hope to have him on soon to revisit this show and revisit the issues. I want to wish everyone a happy Martin Luther King Day. Get out there and do something special for yourself, or just enjoy the fact that a black man died for you. And his effect. You can tell someone has a great effect when someone wants to silence or corrupt the history so that we don't have that impression. Or I've worked at a series of jobs that didn't honor Martin Luther King Day. One that I met personally does. But I'm off on Monday too, so what am I saying? I'm at a point in my career, if the job doesn't offer it, I take it and take the hit on my pay. It's that important. Enjoy Martin Luther King. He was a visionary. He was a powerful, powerful man of God. And we are a better nation and a better people for him. He was a husband and father and just a very, to me, a black man who decided to step in front of a firing squad called America and said, I'll keep talking till you shoot me. And you'll have to shoot me a few times. but I'm gonna keep talking. Again, I think we had to be okay with his magnificence and to keep him honored. I think it's, again, a quote of the day: "I've decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear." Let that sink in for a while. This is a man whose life was repeatedly threatened, repeatedly arrested. Read his papers when he was arrested. Read his jail papers. The Southern Baptist leadership said to him it was unwise for him to be protesting like he did. The major black organization said to him as a minister he should not do that. In the face of adversity, he said, no, I'm going to do this. You have to be a lion, a literal lion, to understand that. And Dr. King argued for racial justice and economic justice and moral responsibility, and he felt they were inseparable. And again, he reminded us of the society is judged not by the rhetoric, but by its budget, its priorities, its policies, and its willingness to protect human dignity. How about that? Are you trying to do that? Or are you just sitting on the sidelines? Because we got a lot of that. And it's never helped us. I'm kind of sad about all the rappers that supported Trump. That's kind of scary. Yeah. It really is kind of scary that they decided that it was better to be with him than the people that brought you up and supported you and made you who you are so you could have this conversation in the first place. We always forget where we come from until they send us where we're going. Ass puffy. They still haven't brought the Epstein papers out. What's the holdup? What's the issue? They keep flashing Bill Clinton, but he's only in a few of those pages. We talking about a million sheets of paper that they now have to go. Remember, they said, no, they're there. Nothing to see, nothing to read here. That's what they said. The lie is the truth's a lie. I want to thank Almology for coming to the station, and we're going to try to start doing some of these shows mobile, learning that now. And I want to thank him for coming down and the kids with him and Mom, bless her heart. Thank you for coming and let me in. I appreciate that. Let's reflect on Dr. King's moral vision and demand more care for the homeless, mentally ill, and more margins of concern into the center of public conscious LGBT chat. I want to thank my parents, my ancestors, Elder Burks, thank you very much, and the First Lady. Want to thank all those folks that have stuck with me throughout this, and I appreciate you. I want to thank my babies. But I'm pushing my babies here. I got to find my girls. Listen, where are my granddaughters? It's going to be the line. Where's my granddaughters, and how come I can't see them? I ain't the daddy. I didn't do anything. I just hung out with my girls. I'm going to start bringing some of the pictures I had when they came over and just hung out with me. And it was just, it's interesting you see your female side. the side of you that, you know, like says that this is who you are if you were a female. I go like, okay, got that one. I want to say thank you to everyone. Have a great Martin Luther King Day, Junior Day, and be peaceful.